Okay, so today I'd like to talk to you about the 4 rules of gun safety. Now, whether you're just going to the range to do a little target practice or whether you carry a concealed weapon, you need to know and always follow these 4 rules of gun safety. The first one is that every firearm is assumed to be loaded until you personally know otherwise. Now, that doesn't mean that your buddy checked it and he told you it's unloaded. It means you personally have visually inspected the weapon. Now, what does that mean? That means that in the case of a firearm, you're going to check the chamber to make sure that it is empty. You're going to make sure that there's not any kind of magazine in the weapon, and you're going to double check it. Once you're confident that the weapon is unloaded, you're safe to handle it. Now, the second rule is simply, probably the most obvious rule: never point your weapon at anything you don't intend to shoot. So many times during training, you'll see people get a little careless with that rule. Perhaps they'll have a firearm and they'll be waving it around across to other people as they're preparing to engage targets. Now, that's very careless. For one thing, if they didn't practice the first rule well enough, they pose a very real danger to these other shooters. But more importantly, it means that they're not aware of where their muzzle is pointed at all times, and that's just a fundamental violation of gun safety. So the rule is simply, wherever the firearm is pointed, you're always aware of that, and you're only pointing it at something that you're willing to shoot. All right. The third rule is just simply a rule about how you handle the firearm. It's a fairly new thing. I haven't seen, probably 20 years ago I didn't see this, but you see it often now. And it has to do with your trigger finger placement on the weapon. It used to be you would see people carry firearms and they would walk around with their finger on the trigger. And the danger of this, of course, is that maybe you trip or you bump something and a little bit of pressure would cause the gun to discharge and you could shoot someone or even shoot yourself. So the rule just simply says that you keep your finger away from the trigger well until you're ready to engage a target. So most people index their finger right here, and when they're ready to shoot, they move their finger and shoot. Now, yes, it does take a little time, maybe a tenth of a second or so to do that, but that little bit of time is worth it to have the safety of not accidentally discharging your firearm. And finally, the fourth rule is that you simply need to be aware of your target and what's beyond your target. Now, by that I mean, let's say you're defending yourself and you've engaged the target and you're ready to discharge your weapon. The question is, if I discharge my weapon, can I do so safely? If the bullet were to pass through my target, would it hit another person, for example? Or would it hit something else that would pose a threat? So I need to understand my target and what my bullet is going to do to my target before I discharge the firearm. So if you follow those 4 rules of gun safety, you will be much, much safer when you're out, whether you're out carrying a concealed weapon or whether you're at the range or whether you're perhaps taking some sort of class with firearms. So I encourage you to practice them diligently and be safe.